Hello, I'm Mr. Call, and welcome to this video tutorial about writing thesis statements. So in this video about thesis statements, we're going to be looking at traditional thesis statements, non-traditional thesis statements, before finally leaving you with some suggestions for writing your thesis statement. So before we get into any of that, we want to look at our example topic for today, World War II. So let's say you were writing an essay about World War II, and you had some ideas kind of floating around in your head. Maybe you made a web on paper and thought about some things you know. The Treaty of Versailles, Hitler, Japan, nationalism at Pearl Harbor. But now you need to nail these ideas down into an essay with a thesis statement. So let's look first at how to take these ideas and turn them into traditional thesis statements. So traditional thesis statements are probably things that you've written in class before. Here's my basic definition. A traditional thesis statement is often going to be one sentence with one main idea with three supporting ideas or three supporting points. It'll usually be used for 5-paragraph essays where each supporting point in the thesis statement is explained in one body paragraph. So you have 3 supporting points, 1 paragraph for each in the body, an introduction and a conclusion to be 5 paragraphs. However, this type of thesis statement can also be used for longer or more complicated essays. So let's look at a first example. So this is a simple example of a traditional thesis statement. World War II was caused by Hitler, nationalism, and Japan. So a very basic list of 3. If we were going to put this into an essay, here's what it might look like. 5-paragraph essay. You can see we have a regular heading, title, or introduction we'd put in our thesis statement, and then we have 1 paragraph for each supporting point before we tie up with the conclusion. If we had a longer essay, we'd still follow the same structure. There'd just be several paragraphs about each topic, kind of chunked together in the order that they were presented in the thesis statement. So let's look at another kind of traditional thesis statement, one that's a little more complex. World War II was caused by Hitler's megalomania, the nationalism of many European countries, and the desire of Japan to expand. So you can see we still have 3 supporting points for our main idea of the causes of World War II, but there's a little more information with each point. We've expanded on it a little bit instead of a simple list. If we were to put this into an essay, we still follow the same type of structure. We have the same sequence of main points, so we could follow the same outlines for either of these. Let's look at a final example of traditional thesis statements. I call this one a more nuanced thesis statement. Although many think that Hitler was the only cause of World War II, nationalism in Japan also had a great impact on the start of the war. So you can see how this still brings up our 3 main points of Hitler, nationalism, and Japan. We could structure it in the same way on a 5-paragraph or longer essay, but this one just has a different balance or presentation of the ideas, making it a little more interesting. So those are 3 different ways you can do a very traditional thesis statement. A main point, 3 supporting points, all in one sentence that really directly tie into what the essay looks like. So let's look at some non-traditional thesis statements. So these are thesis statements that you might have seen while reading a newspaper article, a magazine article, something online. It's something that a lot of professional writers use, but we don't teach explicitly in school very often. So they are a little bit different. So let me give you an overview here. So a non-traditional thesis statement could be 1 or several sentences. There could be 1 or a few main ideas. Those main ideas might not be clearly stated until the end of the text, or perhaps not at all. Within the thesis statement, there might be 0 or several supporting points. And this type of thesis statement could be used for essays of any length, including even a 5-paragraph essay. Within this thesis statement, the supporting points could be explained in 1 or several paragraphs further on. So you can see that there's a lot more freedom, there's a lot more flexibility here, but with that comes a little bit more responsibility to be thoughtful and to be careful about choosing and writing a good one. So you really need to consider your audience, your purpose, your topic, and yourself, your own style, and how you want to present these ideas. Because otherwise it can get kind of hairy. So make sure that you have a clear grasp of what you're trying to accomplish when you're working on one of these. So again, there are a lot of different ways to do thesis statements, non-traditional ones or traditional ones, and here are just a few examples. So the first is using something called the driving question. What really caused World War II? So you can see we have the main point here, but there aren't any supporting points listed. There aren't any preparatory ideas that would get the audience prepared for what's to come. However, you could still use this thesis statement in either type of essay, whether you might see for school, for a 5-paragraph or longer, or it could be for a completely other type of article that doesn't follow either of these examples. So the driving question gives you a little bit of flexibility. Another example of a non-traditional thesis statement is a stepping stone model. Although there are many causes to World War II, perhaps the first and most significant is the role of Hitler. So you can see that unlike the original traditional thesis statements where we listed 3 main points, this one just lists the first. So we might talk about this idea, then later on transition into the second one, and then transition into the third. Everything isn't revealed all at once. Another example of a non-traditional thesis statement would be using a type of story. After America had endured World War I, as well as the Great Depression, it was hesitant to join World War II. However, several international situations caused it to take action. So, similar to the previous one, there aren't specific causes listed as to why America joined, but it does give more of a context, more of a situation here, and we know where the author is going, what they're going to be talking about. Now then, the last example of a non-traditional thesis statement I have for you is a cliffhanger. Although Americans abhor the thought of Nazi concentration camps, few realize that we actually did something similar to a group of our own citizens. And then I'd go on to talk about Japanese internment camps. So in this thesis statement, I haven't even really introduced the topic fully. I've just kind of created a situation that has hopefully caused the reader to be surprised, to think a little bit, and to be more engaged in the text. Now that's kind of how it is with all of these non-traditional thesis statements. It's not all spelled out at the beginning, so it requires a little bit more of the reader. It could make things more interesting, but it kind of makes gives greater responsibility to the writer to make sure that they make all of the writing clear throughout the essay, because it's not all spelled out, laid out at the beginning. So definitely consider some of these non-traditional thesis statements when you're creating yours as well. So let's move on to the actual writing of your thesis statement. So I don't have any specific directions for you, but I do have some suggestions to keep in mind. So, when you are creating your thesis statement, make sure you consider what your topic is, who your audience is, your task and message, your overall situation that you're in, and yourself to really choose a good one. All of these factors could influence how you write and how well your message is received. So all of these will also influence the organizational structure you'll use for your thesis and finally for your paper. So these items in black are different types of ways you could organize your paper, and that'll influence how you write your thesis statement. So I'd encourage you to pause the video at this time and take a second to read these different examples of non-traditional and traditional thesis statements that would go along with these different types of organizational structures. So, after you've paused and taken a read through these, let's go ahead and move on to our final slide. As you're moving forward, I just want to leave you with this final overview of what we've talked about with traditional and non-traditional thesis statements, as well as different organizational structures you could use. If this is still kind of overwhelming and confusing, I might suggest you go through it again, pausing, or just do some other Google searches about different types of thesis statements and how to write them. So thanks for your time, and good luck.